Welcome to Couples Academy Live. Today we're talking about 10 more questions you should ask your spouse right now. Join us.
And good morning. We are broadcasting live from Couples Academy headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm Hassani.
I'm Danielle.
And we are Couples Academy. Now, we're in an amazing conversation that is a continuation from yesterday. We were talking about 10 questions that you should ask your spouse. And so the conversation went so well, we thought we'd do a part two by discussing 10 more questions. And so the question I have for you is, did you ask your spouse those questions? Did you engage in that conversation?
Right.
This is not great information just to listen to and do nothing with. The goal is, how do we implement it into the marriage?
Exactly. People are always saying, I don't know how to talk to him, or I don't know how to talk to her. You know, you have these cliche conversations when you're coming and you're going. How's the weather? How's work? Work was work. We used to say that all the time.
Yep.
How was work?
Work was work. Nothing to talk
Right?
about, nothing
You
to
have
say.
nothing to talk about. It doesn't go deep at all. But what we found is that when people get bored in their relationship and they're going through and they start trying to find somebody else to talk to, whether it be a friend on the job
There
or
it is.
whoever, these are the kinds of conversations that they get into. They're in discovery mode, right? We all started out in discovery mode, looking for answers about one another, trying to dig deep and get to know what are your likes, your interests, how do you perceive me. All these things we have to continue to do if we want to keep that in love feeling
That's
going,
right.
if we want to keep the intrigue, if we want to stay interested and connected.
And when you're meeting somebody new, you're so inquisitive. All you're doing is asking questions. You want to get to know, you're exploring. And so I don't care if you've been married for a month, a year, or a decade. You have to take the time to rediscover your spouse, because you're not today who you were 10 years ago.
Correct.
You're a different version of you. Like literally every cell in your body literally what becomes new, regenerates itself,
They
and you
say
become a
every
new
7
person.
years. They say that. We gotta fact check
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But yeah, your cells regenerate, and apparently you become a completely different person. So that means that we have so much more to discover about
We
each
certainly
other.
do.
And you know what else I think about is how over time how we stop having the interest, right? And so now I think I know everything. I think I've discovered everything about you. There's nothing else to learn. There's nothing else to know. But that's not true, because after a while, you actually become a new person
You
with
do.
different interests.
You do.
And suddenly you start hearing from your spouse, I don't really like that anymore. I know that there was a time when I actually liked that, but I don't like that anymore. Can you stop doing that? Or can we do these things? I'm finding new interest in these things. These excite me. Do you want to join me in that venture? So we absolutely change over the years.
So we want to say good morning to Kathy and Vashan and Latasha and Sonia and Robin and Kiera. All of you are dialing in and saying good morning. We just want to jump into these questions and get this conversation going. So question number one, part two of number one, is what are a few ways that I need to be more understanding in our marriage? That is huge. That's a huge one. How can I be more understanding to you? Like, we all have our own views, our own perspectives, our own ways of looking at the world. And a lot of times couples fall into this whole, and you've heard this before. Well, listen, we're just going to agree to disagree. We're just going to agree to disagree. You see it your way, I see it my way. But many of us want to be heard. Many of us want to be understood. We don't want our opinions to just be tossed aside as if it means nothing. We want our opinions and our perspectives valued. So the question is, how can we be more understanding?
Yeah. I think it's about having these conversations where you have to be open to understand how I'm feeling based on what you're doing. I think that's the big caveat there. Like, how open how open are you to soft critique? You know, if I say to you, you know what, when we went for a walk the other day, you said something that didn't strike me. Well, I just want to get clarity on that. Did you mean this? A lot of times coming like that, gentle, still sparks something in somebody, and now you're in a fight and you tried your best to
That's
approach
right.
the situation gently. So being able to have that level of understanding means you have to have an openness to know that, listen, we all fumble. We're not going to get it right all the time. Sometimes I mess up. Sometimes I say it wrong. Sometimes I say it harsh, whatever. I got to be open to that so that I'm able to give and offer the understanding that you need.
Absolutely. Sonia says, no,
Hey,
we
Sonia.
haven't asked the questions yet, but we have a full weekend planned and we're going to have fun with the questions during that time.
Oh, good.
Love to hear it.
Awesome.
Kathy says we agreed to do questions Saturday while traveling to the
Hey,
soccer
Kathy,
tournament.
and thank you.
This is great drive through or driving conversation. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially if it's a long ride.
And it's fun.
Yeah.
If you keep it fun and
Yes.
if you keep it light.
There it is. And we have another viewer from Brazil. Good to see you this morning. Glad that you're tuning in. Let's go to the next question. What are a few ways you desire to see our finances improve? That's a huge one. You know, we talk about the 5 things that negatively impact a marriage: money, sex, communication, in-laws, and parenting. Those are the 5. But money is one of the biggest ones. Money is one of the reasons so many marriages wind up in divorce court, because they can't come to terms with how to deal with it. And everybody's situation is different. While some people are struggling just to keep a job, other people are struggling in terms of they have the money, but what do we do with it? How do we prioritize it? I don't like the fact that you're a spender, I'm a saver. You don't like the fact that I'm saving and you want to spend. Like, there's different philosophies and ways of doing things. So as a couple, how are some ways that we can improve our money, particularly in this season and in the times that we are in?
Absolutely. I mean, what was coming to my mind was just like future, it's important to come together and discuss what's our plans for the future. What's our future plans for our money? When do we want to retire? How much do we want to retire with? You have to come together and have these conversations. Otherwise, you're going to get to your future and you're going to be up a river.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. All right. Next question. This is a good question. It says, what are the 3 places within 200 miles that you would like to spend a few days? Now, this is a great question, because during this global pandemic, we know that international travel has suffered. People aren't traveling because, depending upon where you are in the world, you may not be able to, or it just may not be as cost effective. And interestingly enough, I was watching a news report, and they were talking to the founder and CEO of Airbnb, and how initially there was a huge wait and struggle that they had because of the pandemic. But what they realized within months, they bounced back because people still had a need to travel, but they were traveling locally. So it wasn't about getting on the plane and going halfway across the world to rent an Airbnb. They're willing to drive across state lines to get an Airbnb. We just had an amazing family weekend getaway locally. Smoky Mountains, Tennessee.
Yeah.
We're talking
it was like
a
being in
4-hour journey.
Other place. Well, it was a whole other
It
place.
was.
But it felt like we were like on the other side of the country, but we were only a few hours away. So that makes sense.
Yeah. So have a conversation with your spouse. What could be a local getaway? I'm sure there's many parts of your existing state that you have never been to. Another great idea is this. Like, we're here in Atlanta. Many of you are in major metropolitan areas or near them. And a lot of times you take your area for granted. Like, how many times have we been to the islands and we talk to the locals and they don't really do the beach? But we are traveling to get to their beach. Or people who come here to Atlanta and they're exploring things and telling us about things that we didn't know about. Sometimes it's good to be a tourist in your own area. Staycations and enjoy it. And that's another way to connect and bring love, passion, and excitement into your relationship. All right, the next question. Here we go. What strengths do I bring to our relationship? That is huge. How do I show up? What are my assets? What am I doing well? Where am I showing up in the right way? So the question is not how do I need to improve and how do I need to get better, but what are my strengths? I think when you are forming a team, just think about a company, you want to put together a dream team. People have strengths in different areas, and the strengths of that team will determine how successful that team can be. So as a partnership, as a team, what are my strengths? Where do I show up well? Where do you show up well? These are necessary conversations that couples should have.
And it's important because we spend so much time focused on the critical part, what they're doing wrong, what is missing, all the failures throughout the week, that we seldom actually talk to somebody and say, hey, this is what you did good. So I think it just changes the focus. It actually helps you to see your partner for who they really are, all the gifts and talents, what they bring to the family, what they're bringing to your work and finances and your lifestyle, all of that, we sometimes forget to mention it.
Absolutely. And after really discussing that question, the next logical question to ask is, what what are the ways that I can improve as a husband
Mm.
or a wife? So
Mm-hmm.
number one, I know what my strengths are, but where can I get better? Are there strengths that I can strengthen even more,
Yeah.
or are there weaknesses that I
Yeah.
can turn into strengths? What's missing in your
Yeah.
relationship? Where are your deficits? Where are you struggling? Like we talk about all the time, the difference between your marriage and your relationship, right? So if this is new for you, your marriage represents your partnership, delegation of responsibilities, management of the finances, how you parent your children, planning for the future is the daily tactical responsibilities of managing a home. But then you have your relationship, which speaks to your companionship. So that's sexual fulfillment, blending of personalities, effective communication. It's the heartfelt connection that you have with your partner. So some of you may be in great relationships, but horrible marriages.
Yeah.
Or some may be in great marriages, but horrible relationships. So where are we strong and where can we become stronger or improve
Yeah.
in
And
our
you see how
lives?
vulnerable these questions are?
They are.
I mean, it really forces you to let the guard down and expose your emotions, right? Allow them to see into you, be intimate with the person. And so you want to be careful how you approach your spouse with these questions. Some of these are going to hit some strings, right? Because who knows what the environment of your relationship is right now? Maybe the last time you mentioned these topics, it was not in a positive light,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you got to just make sure you're, setting the stage for this conversation, knowing that you're going to hit some hot button topics, but coming with the right heart, I think will make a big difference.
There it is. I hope these questions are helping you. If they are, we want you to comment in the chat and let us know. We have another question. This is the sixth question. What are your top 3 favorite love songs and why?
I like that one because, again, when we're learning each other in the beginning, that's a question that I would want to know. What do you listen to? I like Groove Theory. You like Groove Theory? Well, I listen to this. Like, that is discovery stage. So that goes back to that idea that there's so much more about us that there is to learn. Like, I was shocked getting into your car. It wasn't recently, but like one time I got in your car maybe in the last few months, and I heard like songs that I hadn't been listening to. So I mean, I don't listen to the radio, right? But I had heard some songs, and I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't. Hasani's kind of hip. Like,
What are you talking about?
You were listening to something, and it was like modern, and I was like, oh.
Wait a minute. I don't even know how to take that right now. What you
like,
saying?
Oh, okay.
What you saying?
So the point is that the music speaks to you and tells people a lot about you. So that would be one of the primary questions you would ask when you're dating. What do you listen to? What kind of music are you into? Prince. That's if you're into Prince, that tells me a lot about you. Okay.
I guess you know a lot about me then.
Right. So my point is that it's very good for discovery.
It is,
and
absolutely.
it's a good lighthearted question to throw into the mix.
And just as a side note, my playlist is dope. So I don't know what Danielle is talking about. I got a dope playlist and a variety of music that will hit you.
Yes, you do.
Thank you,
Yes,
babe.
you
There it
do.
is. All right.
Uh-huh.
I love it. We have a new viewer calling in from Indonesia. I love the fact that we have people from South Africa. They're all over the
All
world.
over.
And what we're realizing is that no matter where you are on the planet, there may be culture that separates us, language that separates us, race, ethnicity, faith, tradition. But the one commonality that we all have together is relationship and the desire to have the best relationship that we can have. And when we travel around the world, of course, cultural differences kind of impact how you do life together, but people are still searching for love and understanding and intimacy and connection and all those different things. So it always touches our hearts when we know that people around the globe are tuning in and really getting something out of this. All right. You have something to say?
No, we got a question here. Darlene Ponder says, 37 years, how do I start a new way of communication? And I think it's interesting. I mean, 37 years, I would think I know everything there is to know about Hassani. There's nothing else to know. But most of our communication is what we do, right? And more than what we're speaking. You think about raising kids. They do what they see you do, not necessarily what you say. And so sometimes it's about doing something different. Like, if you got the same routine every day, you do the same thing, get up on the same side of the bed, go get your coffee, go sit down in the same chair, It's like you're so predictable. My brain is trained to ignore what is status quo.
Mm-hmm.
But when you start to shift things and do things differently, then you will begin to communicate differently because you've brought newness into your world. So check your routine, see what's going on, and see what you can do to shake things up. That's a start for you to communicate differently by doing something different.
There it is. That's true. Very, very true. We talk about that all the time. Here's another question from Cindy. Anytime I ask my husband questions, he says nothing is ever wrong with me. As a wife, he has no complaints, but he was unfaithful. So maybe he feels he shouldn't say he struggles with our marriage at all. I would say that's pretty accurate. That could be the case, absolutely. So what you're saying is he was unfaithful, yet he says nothing was wrong. And I think a lot of times people have a major problem with communicating. And one of the main reasons why people are unfaithful is because they couldn't feel like they could have an honest conversation with their spouse about what they were thinking, about what they were feeling. And so they would shut down, walls would be built up between you and the partner, but windows would be erected with your partner and somebody else. And that's a major problem. And so a lot of times, if, for instance, and we see this play out, if I'm the one who was unfaithful, how dare I identify anything wrong with my partner? I'm not in a position to do so because everything must be wrong with me because I'm the one who had the affair. And so a lot of times there's a whole lot of pressure not to say the wrong thing, and how dare you, and it's rejected, it's denied, it's not accepted. And so my question would be, has there been an environment of safety where he could communicate? Like, it's one thing to ask the question, but is he beat up? Is he told that he's wrong? Is he interrupted? Is he overtalked?
Yeah.
When he does
Absolutely.
share his opinion.
Yeah, and to balance that, that's not to say, okay, you were the reason for the infidelity, okay? Because when you could look at 10 relationships that all sucked, okay?
Yep.
Worse than that relationship, but find no infidelity. So the infidelity, that means that the person who cheated was unwilling to work on their stuff and also unwilling to work on the stuff between you. And so they used the window, as Hassani spoke of. And so, but we have to stop getting away from this idea that because somebody chose to cheat as their way to not deal with things, there's nothing that you have to do. There's no changes that you have to make. There's no influence that you had in making things difficult in the relationship.
Absolutely true. And I don't want that to be confused. So thanks for that clarification. Here's question number 7. Do you feel more emotionally connected than we did early in our marriage?
That's an interesting question because early for one person and what that means is different for another. Early in the beginning stages, most relationships are great, right? But you get like into that 2 to 3 year period, some relationships are great and some go through madness right at that stage. I think we might have skipped it at that stage, the 2 to 3 year. But so I think it depends on the couple. What do you think?
Regarding us, or
Well,
just
not
in general?
just in general.
I mean, yeah, I think to your point, I think every couple is different, and I think some people are in that in love phase at the beginning of the marriage because it's new, it's fresh, you're learning each other, and oh my God, and then to your point, issues take over, and then you got to kind of work your way back. Some people, from the moment they say I do and cross the threshold, they are in toxic hell.
Yeah, well, they started sometimes in toxic hell.
There it
But
is.
you know what? I think maybe with this question, apply it to, when you were most connected. Look at that, because I think that's the goal. So wherever you are right now, if you were looking in the rear view, right? We always like to talk about the rear view mirror, how it's our reflection in the past and what we can learn from it. How are we now in comparison to that?
There it is. Question number 8. These are some good questions. What are 2 things that you forgot to celebrate this year? Or let's flip it. What are 2 things that you should decide to celebrate this year? Either one of them. Now, if you think about that, the pandemic has created a lot of confusion, a lack of clarity, uncertainty, fear, anxiety, and it's like life has come to a screeching halt and people don't function and operate the way they once did. If we think about the fact that we had what is this? Yeah, we had 4 birthdays. Our girls had 4 birthdays during the pandemic, and obviously they weren't the way they typically would be if we weren't in a pandemic. But you should still do your best to experience and explore and have fun on whatever level you can. I think about people graduating from high school. They didn't have official graduations, and they were having drive-through graduate, but they still
Baby
did something.
showers.
Baby showers.
You know,
Yeah,
no,
on
no,
Zoom, right?
on Zoom. Nobody's going to the hospital. You know, and some people have not even touched the brand new baby or have been able to get in close proximity. Lots of different things have happened.
Yeah.
But what positive can you pull out of it? That's the question,
Yeah,
right?
that's the question.
And I think that most people will say, everyone that I've talked to recently has said that they could pull some positive experience out of all of this, whether it's closeness with the children, with the family, reestablishing things, getting into a health routine. There is some positive. So you can always look to that.
Yep. Stephen, great question. He says, what if one person cannot remember any good times in the relationship? I would say you need to think a little bit harder. What lens are you looking through? Because when you're in pain, you kind of, with a broad stroke, paint an entire marriage as being one way. But when you look through a different lens, you're able to see some of the good. I mean, I don't know a single relationship that we've ever come across where there wasn't any good times. There was something that brought that couple together. There were situations or circumstances or moments or seasons throughout the course of the relationship where things were well. I just think that may mean your perspective is skewed based upon what you currently may be dealing with. That's my perspective on it. What do you think?
I think you nailed it.
There it is. All right. Question number 9. 2 more questions to go. What were some things we used to do before we were married that we miss doing now? Now,
Wow,
that's
that's
huge.
a good one.
That's a huge one because
I love that one.
we walk couples through a phenomenal exercise, many of the clients we work with, and it's called the 8 greatest moments. And we kind of look at your relational timeline to see what were the 8 greatest moments that you shared as a couple. And when couples go through it, interestingly enough, 80% of all of those experiences are before I do. Now, we're talking to people who've been married for 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years, but 80% of their greatest moments came before they said I do. And that proves that we do marriage wrong. We have the ability of having connection and having fun and having wonderful experiences, but there's a shift that happens after I do that maybe we're not prepared for or don't know how to properly adjust to, and it causes a problem. What do you think about that?
I agree, and I'm sitting here thinking about all the great moments that we've had in our marriage because we made that our intention, right? So if I have to look way back in the day to find a moment, that's going to be a sad existence with you. Like, I remember when we used to. How many couples do you hear say that? We used to do these things, and now we don't do them anymore. That's what we're talking about. Reviving those things, continuing to do those things throughout the marriage. That's how you move forward.
Yes. Yes. JD has a question. How can I help my wife get past the anger? That's a good question. Number one, you need to discover what the root cause of that anger is. And as with anything, there's a role that you play in terms of showing up and supporting and encouraging and speaking life into your spouse. But then there's a role that she has to play to overcome her own internal anger. And I think what happens is a lot of times the hurt partner is looking at the one who hurt them to be responsible for their personal healing, and they take no responsibility and they do nothing to better themselves. That happens a lot, but there's a role that you both have to play, and you both have to be crystal clear on what that role is. You can't play her role, she can't play your role. And so we talked about this in previous sessions that we've done on these lives about the 5 anger stages and how to begin to overcome those things. So I would say dig deep, have in-depth conversation.
I would say reach out. I would say reach out. Anger is such a difficult thing, and it has its place in healing. I don't know what she's angry with you about. That's the big thing. And we don't know what resolution has come of that issue. And so if there's no resolution with this issue, and then how is that anger ever going to go anywhere? So there's a lot in that question that you're asking. I would say reach out so that we can help you with that, because anger has its place. She needs to have anger, but then that anger needs to be released so that she can move towards healing. It's a process. It's not just, I need her to stop being angry, right? There's a whole bunch that has to go into that. So reach out to us.
And I love what you said, anger has its place. So anger is not necessarily a bad thing, but it can have a bad or evil application to it.
Yeah, it's
anger
how you use it.
Anger can have a positive application to it.
Exactly.
I think that's an excellent point. Last question number 10. Hopefully these have been helpful for you. What do I need to know most about you right now? That's a significant question.
It sure is.
What are you thinking about?
I'm thinking about the time that you wrote a letter to me, and you actually did that process where, like, I forget what program you were in, but it had you write this letter, and we drove somewhere, and you just read
Mm,
everything about, and it wasn't no big deal, but I mean it was a big deal because you were like updating me on stuff that I needed to know that I wouldn't know.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, like things like health issues and concerns. Sometimes people go to the doctor and don't tell their spouse what's going on.
Mm,
Things like that are important. Sometimes you're in financial trouble. You made a
mm.
mistake or you fell behind in bills and your spouse doesn't know. Sometimes you got laid off. You have no job and your spouse doesn't know. So that question is powerful.
It is. It is. Those are the top 10 questions. Listen, from yesterday's 10 questions to today's 10 questions, you have 20 questions that you can
So
chew
many.
on. You
Come
can
on.
chew on and digest these things
Yes.
for quite some time. So don't race through it. Don't rush through it. If you spend one day dealing with one question and unpacking it and stripping that thing down till you get clarity, that's what you need to do. These are the things that will help you build a level of intimacy you've never had. Listen, guys, we hope you enjoyed yourselves. This was a great session. We just want to send you a few quick announcements before we sign off, and we just want to let you know that we love you and we will see you on tomorrow.